Yes, we can see the slides and hear you.
So, hello everyone, welcome to Data Umbrellas webinar. I'm going to do a brief introduction and then I'll hand over the mic and camera to Tereza. And then at the end we'll have a question and answer session, and we please urge you to ask on topic questions. About Data Umbrella, we are a non-profit organization and a community for underrepresented persons in data science. I am a statistician and data scientist by profession. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and GitHub as Beryl. We have a code of conduct, and we thank you for making Data Umbrella a welcoming community where folks can come and join us again for future meetings. There are several ways in which you can support us as Data Umbrella. First, you can start by following our code of conduct, where you will contribute to making it a welcoming and collaborative space. We also have a Discord community chat where you get to answer and ask questions, and also share events and jobs and other resources related to data science. We also are on Open Collective, so you can support us by making a donation on Open Collective. Open Collective handle is Data Umbrella. We are also on Benevity, which is a company matched enable platform where you'll make your donation and your company will match the same donation. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have amazing playlists on our YouTube channel, like the career advice. We also have other playlists on data visualization, contributing to open source, and open source sprints like scikit-learn, PyMC, and also a playlist on NumPy series. We also have a monthly newsletter on Substack, which you can subscribe to. You can find us on Substack as Data Umbrella as well. We have our website, dataumbrella.org, where we have posted several resources, including open source accessibility and responsibility, AI ethics, and many more. We are on all social media platforms as Data Umbrella. You can sign up for a Meetup, where you'll get to be notified when we post upcoming events. We actually have close to 2 at most events per month. We are also on YouTube as Data Umbrella, where we post all the videos to our recent webinars. You'll find over 50 videos there. We also have a blog where you can read interesting articles about data science. This webinar has a live captioning option. So on your screen, you'll find, for live viewers of this webinar, a closed captioning is available. So if you feel you need to use the live captioning, feel free to do so. We call for volunteers to help us add timestamps to this current webinar. So this webinar is on data visualization. If you feel you are up to it or you're interested in helping us add timestamps to the YouTube video, please do so. The issue is on GitHub. That is the link. We have shared the slides on the handout section, so you can just open up the slides, go to the issue, and contribute to it. You don't have to add timestamps to the whole video. You can pick a section and do it based on what you want to do or what you're capable of doing. So adding timestamps is actually easy. It's a good beginner option for getting familiar with GitHub. If you encounter any problems, you can just comment on the issue and we'll get right back to you. Upcoming events for July, we have 2 events planned for July. One is on how data scientists can contribute to Wikipedia. The other one is serving PyTorch models. All these events are available on our Meetup handle. You can sign up for them. So today's talk is short stories of data visualization, and our speaker is Tereza Iofciu. So Tereza is an experienced speaker on data, product management, and diversity. She has worked as a data scientist, manager, data engineer, product manager, and she's an accredited leader with 15 years of experience and validated expertise in data science and machine learning. She's a co-organizer of the PyLadies Hamburg group, hosting regular meetups dealing with data, Python, and IoT together with some awesome ladies. She's also a PSF Code of Conduct and Diversity and Inclusion Working Group's member and has been awarded the Python Software Foundation 2021 Quarter 1 Community Service Award. You can find her on Twitter, LinkedIn, and GitHub. Feel free to tweet about this event on Twitter and tag us. And with that, I'll now hand over the talk to Tereza. If you have any questions during the webinar, just drop them in the chat and then we will look at them. So Tereza, you can start sharing your screen.
Thank you, Beryl. So let's see. How am I doing this? Okay. Do I do tabs or the window? Okay. Can everybody see it well? Okay. So yeah. So basically, thank you everybody for spending the time now and listening to my talk on 15 data stories this time. Last year I managed 30. As you heard, I'm a data science coach at NoFisher, where we do data science boot camps and data analytics boot camps, all sorts of boot camps. My pronouns are she, her, and this talk is about this collection here that you can access about the data visualization that I did in April. About the 30-day charge challenge. So before we get there, I would just like to say, if you have questions, just write them in the channel, because we are going to go over 15 data visualizations that I did. And I think if you have questions for a particular visualization, just feel free to ask when you think of the question. Don't wait until the end of the presentation. So basically, so the 30 days chart challenge is a challenge that started last year. It's about doing a data visualization every day in April, and each 6 days has a bigger general topic, and then for each day there's a subtopic for each topic. So basically, and people are encouraged to share on Twitter their visualization, and then everybody can basically see what other people did, and then kind of get inspired, and then like all sorts of and it's not connected to any platform or any language, so everybody's free to do data visualization in whatever they feel comfortable, pen and paper or tech or not, whatever. So my goal in participating in the 30-day charge challenge last year was to basically kind of learn D3.js. I always was fascinated about pretty and nice infographics and data visualizations, but I never kind of had the patience to kind of practice, in the sense of how much practice you need in order to kind of get really good at it, right? So I'm still basically dabbling. But this year, my goal was also to basically develop like a style, so to say. So you'll see that all of my visualizations, except one, kind of have the same style. They are all based on, I'm using in all of them Wes Anderson colors, because I've seen this, I have a typo. I was watching this year the French Dispatch movie. I can totally recommend, and it had such beautiful colors everywhere that I basically really wanted to do that. And why am I using Observable? So you see this presentation, the slides, I have them also on Observable. I'm using Observable because I really like the community. The community is really active, and a lot of people are basically posting a lot of visualizations on Observable and charts, and it's really cool to see what is possible and so on. And then also it's really good for inspiration. So you can just go on, I can go on Observable and I can search with some keywords and then, or do some browsing and then refine my keywords, and I can find new visualizations, ideas that I can basically copy, right? Because I am not a JavaScript or D3 developer. So for me, it's like, I need to basically still copy paste quite a lot. And that is pretty easy with Observable, right? And then you just find somebody else's notebook. This is also now a notebook. And then you can basically either fork it or just copy it and then use it up for your own. And the other thing that is happening, and it's really cool on Observable, is people, so you can copy, you can fork someone's notebook, but you can then also give them feedback. And basically people can easily add suggestions to your notebooks and so on. And if you're like active in the community, and people start doing that more and more. So this year I did only 15 days of the 30 days, which is, as everybody likes to say about this kind of challenges, it's important to participate, and it's not really important to get all of the days done. I've already noticed, so last year I did manage to do all the 30 days. It was very intense. I mean, some of the charts I did, especially last year, some of the charts did indeed take me a whole day, like, on the weekend. And this year I basically didn't have time. And for me, once April is over, it's really hard to kind of continue doing the challenge when the whole world is not participating in the challenge anymore. So that is pretty cool. I really need this, for my own motivation. I really need other people doing the same thing that I'm doing. I know I was like that in school too. So learning together for exams, all sorts of together doing. So let's look at the charts that I did and kind of like talk a little bit about the process that I did. So this one was the first one. And already here, you're probably wondering, where do people get ideas, right? So the topic here was part of a whole and doing comparison. And honestly, I was sitting in bed and I was just looking at the plants I have in my flat. And I just kind of thought, how many people have plants, right? So I started searching for it online, and then I discovered there was only one data set about plants, and this was like a US-based data set, and it wasn't really a data set, really. It was some news article, some online news article talking about plants, and it turns out that quite a lot of people have plants, but actually a lot of people don't have plants, although plants are really beneficial. So this is basically my one pie chart that I am allowing myself to do for at once. So basically, like, I try not to do pie charts, but this one seemed to be okay for a pie chart. And yeah, so basically that's that. And you can see already the code that's it, right? So, I mean, there's functions, and then it's not really, it's a pie chart. So it's not, doesn't get too sophisticated. And if you go on the notebooks, whenever you click on the visualization, it takes you to the notebook of the visualization, and you can take a look at the code itself. On the next day, on day 2, the topic was pictogram. Now, I already at this point noticed that basically the title is really important. So I saw that a lot of people were already, so not a lot of people, but like there's like 2 types of titles that you can do. You can have a title where you say, this is the distribution of illegally and overfished and versus legal fished fish in the world, and you can show the same chart, right? And then, or this is how many fish are illegally overfished, or slash, right? Or you can actually go and just say the number And then you have 2 in 5 fish we eat are fished illegally or overfished. And that basically is way more impactful. And then after that, I think I started doing that for all of the charts that I did. I tried to do that. And I think this is also something that it is a little bit hard to do because you end up yourself having to interpret the chart. But it is what makes people look at your chart once or twice, right? So I think if I would say, this is something that I developed during this year's challenge. I think before I was just writing, hey, this is the distribution of this, or this is how it looks like, and then have the user or the audience do the work to kind of read, to read basically the chart and then like kind of like think about it. So if you have to think about interpreting your charts when you start doing data visualization. So yeah, so basically the topic of this day was doing pictograms, and which is not really easy to do because this is JavaScript, right? So this chart would have been so much faster to be done in Illustrator or I don't know, Figma. Everybody's using Figma now, but I went with JavaScript, and this was a little bit more work. Yeah, so basically that was this day. And then the next day, well, as we all know, there is a war going on in the world. So I was thinking, how many days have we had, global peace? And then it turns out that not that many days. I basically, I don't remember how I got to the squares. I was thinking of doing circles again, but then I wanted to do something else. And I think as this is all manually, so to say, drawn, kind of, I would say that the hardest work that went in this chart was to kind of figure out how to come up with the proportions to change, to go from like what is days to go to an area, right? So I'm having here is like the days, which is like a 1 dimension is now encoded in a 2-dimensional object. And I thought I wanted to kind of stay accurate with that and not kind of distort it. So yeah, so basically I had to calculate by hand what are all the proportions needed for this. And you can see the little off-white dot in the middle are how many basically global peace days we've had in the world since in the recorded history of mankind, right? So we only have 917 years of recorded history. One of the things that I find also very fascinating about participating in this kind of challenges where you don't really have a lot of constraints, right? So the topic of today was history and comparisons. And I remember I was kind of like, oh, I should do something with women in history. I wanted to compare women in history, and then I couldn't really find cool data sets. And eventually I got to this one. I learned a lot, knowledge about the world and stuff like that. So I think I can totally recommend this. Besides data visualization, it's also like learning a lot about the world. And the next day, the topic was flora. So this was a fun day. I don't know if you all know it. So there is one woman in Berlin, and she has this project. It's called Named After Men, where she basically posts on Twitter. She posts basically plants that are named after men. It turns out that most plants out there are named after men because the men were doing all the exploring and discovering the world and naming things after themselves. So basically, but I had the question of how many are named after women, and she didn't actually have this data set on her website. So I ended up having to go on Wikipedia, and there are 4 pages on Wikipedia. Each page is with a chunk of the alphabet, and I had to manually label the gender. And now you're going to be like, wait, you label gender based on the name? And I have to tell you, I actually opened the Wikipedia pages of most of these people, And if there was no Wikipedia page, I searched them online to figure out, history books, who those people are. So that was quite a lot of searching. We're talking about 4,000 people here almost. And the funny part is that men in the 1700s had what we would now say are women name. Maria used to be a man name back then. I don't know what's wrong with the 1700s people. But yeah, so names change, and what gender is related to name is also changing. So yeah, so it turns out that very few plants are named after women. And some of those women were basically the inspiration, were used as inspiration just because they had been the wife of someone. So and this is this chart is actually not as complicated. It is still a pie chart, right? But different. It's two pie charts, a tiny pie chart on top of a larger pie chart. And each leaf is, in this sense, one part of the alphabet. I just used the structure that came from Wikipedia. It didn't actually add up to the story, so I didn't talk about it, but it was just like a nice way to split the flower. Okay, so what did I do next? The next day was slope. So I'm not a big fan of slope charts. So slope charts is something that you start from, you want to show the trend of something moving from one time to another, and it's there. And you want to see the difference in trends between different groups. So here I found a data set on the height of German people. And for whatever reason, it turns out that Germans are shorter when old than when young, or the shorter live longer. So I couldn't really decide. I mean, so the problem was that the data set didn't actually contain all the information. So it might have contained, but the data set is like from this very cryptic website of the German something. And it had like a huge PDF in German explaining how the data was collected and all that. So it was really kind of almost impossible to understand if the people that are measured here at 25, 30 are the same people that are at 75 years old. So that's why my title in the end was basically say, okay, so people are shorter when old, either because, they live longer or because they shrink. I couldn't say. Okay, so, but the gap is diminishing. That's good, right? So maybe we do live healthier lives, maybe. And what else? Yeah, so that's that. One thing I tried in order to do this data visualizations to have as little text as possible. I tried basically to use, you see, the color of the text to be connected to the graph, so that you have like, it's clear now that the pink stuff is women and the blue stuff is men. Also, if you have at any time questions, please feel free to write in the chat. I will answer them as I see them. So don't worry about that. Now, the next chart is life expectancy. So this day had the topic to do data. It was the data day topic. So, and the topic was our world in data. So I had to get a data set from our world in data. One thing I have to say about our world in data is that they have the weirdest data format ever. And it is usually a complete nightmare to clean up the data, even though it's in one place, right? So they have countries together with continents in the same data set. And they don't have a label, this is a country, and this is a data set, this is a continent. So this is super annoying. So here I made, so this is a bee swarm bubbles, and this is a chart that I am going to use 2 more times. And you'll see it's the same, it's inspired by the same, it's copied basically by the same, from the same chart. but it will look 3 times differently. So this is how it looks like one time. And I will remind you again when we get to it again. So, or actually I can show it. So this one here and this one are the same chart like this one. So, but we'll talk when we get there. Okay. So here I had the constraint of using what I would have said rather a boring data set, and with a lot of data, right? So and I could have done like a year, but in the end I kind of decided to go and do the life expectancy per so each bubble here is a group of countries, and how many countries are in this bin, that's how large the bubble is. And the thing was to see that the life expectancy is kind of growing. And that was basically, you see the larger years are at the top and lighter. Now, in the end, the choices on how this graph looks like were made completely based on aesthetics. So sometimes, you have to work with like not a cool topic. So then I went for aesthetics. So yeah. Now, this one was a chart that I really, really liked. And the topic was physical. And I had found this data set on marathon world records, is on Wikipedia, and my plan was actually to use it on a different day. But then when I realized that the data was about running marathon, and it's like something physical, if you think of physical activity, right, you always think about running, some people. So I thought I have to keep it for this day. So I kept it for this day. This is the same chart basically as the previous one, but now there are some different settings. So like on the Biswarm walk chart, you can, depending on what you put on the y-axis, it makes things like you saw the straight lines, and or you say they shouldn't overlap and so on, and then they go differently. So basically, so basically here you see that I do the same thing again, where I use the colors for different groups of people. And then you see that men who were allowed to participate in marathons already a long time ago, both men and women, they had a tendency to improve their running time. So these are the world records, so it's just the best. But men were kind of a little bit faster about it because they had 50 years of head start. And again, I came up with a title that is about being invited to the marathon party. And you see the biggest bubble here is about 5 hours and 40 minutes. And now these days, a man runs a marathon in 2 hours and 1 minute, and a woman in 2 hours and 14 minutes. Of course, the time on the bubbles are distorted, right? So it's not like linear scale. And this is something that I think this is one of the biggest challenges that you have when you do this kind of data visualization is, how do you make the chart look pretty and that sends a message, but that message shouldn't distort reality too much, right? So if you try to make what is the scale to use for the bubble so that you do see these differences. So I think this is always a trade-off that you have to be aware of. So the next chart that I did, this one is on, the topic was mountains. And I basically had this super awesome idea of checking how many people live in the mountains versus how many people live not in the mountains. I wanted to kind of do it by country and then look. So I wanted to look at the countries, and then I basically discovered that I couldn't find any data on this. I thought this would be on Our World in Data. And I basically thought that it would be, easy to find, but it didn't. It turned out that this was almost impossible to find. So the only place I found data on people living in the mountains was like on a UN report. So that was that. And then and they already had nice data visualization there. And then I ended up doing another data visualization. And this one was really took quite a long time to do this. Yet again, a data visualization that if you do it in Illustrator or anything else that, that just has the drag and drop triangles, it would have been a lot faster. But as I decided to do it in JavaScript in D3.js, it ended up being a lot of work, because whereas lines and rectangles and squares and circles are super easy to do, everything else that is falling out of that category are polygons, are shapes, and so on. So this one was polygons, and then each polygon is defined by coordinates that were not very well documented. So it was a lot of trial and error to figure it out. And also all of the text appearing here and getting connected to the chart is basically, I had to kind of figure out in pixels where it is, the coordinates. So yeah, so the story here in the end is actually quite interesting. And it's one of those things I had no idea about, is that basically in the developing countries, there's more people living in the mountains than in the developed countries. And so basically 90% of the mountain people in the world live in developing countries. And these developing countries actually have only 54% of the mountains. And apparently life in the mountains is very hard. So most of these people do not actually have enough food to eat to have a healthy life. And on the other side, mountains are very important for the ecosystem. And they might be exploited in bad ways for the environment in developing countries. So this is a interesting topic. So there was a question from before for the previous chart. Oops, I clicked the wrong button. So yeah, the woman here holding the sign was, I basically have it because women were not allowed to participate in marathons for all these years. It's not like women didn't want to participate in marathons. It's like women were not. There were we only had races available for men, and there were no competitions available for women. So basically, I think you can also search. There were also stories about women trying to participate in men's marathon, disguising themselves and stuff like that, and getting totally harassed and everything. So it took quite a long time for this to happen, the equality in sports. That's why I thought adding a nice protest here. Okay, so next chart. Russian exports growth. So this was the day on statistics. And why I came up with this chart was because on the previous day, there had been on Twitter a huge debate on a chart based on this data. So on the world data on exports. Somebody had posted the chart, and it had the y-axis with the countries ordered alphabetically or something like that. And then it turned out in a huge debate on Twitter with a lot of people hating whoever did that chart. How could they have done this, doing the alphabetic order of the countries, and anybody could have done it better, and so on. So I thought it would be funny to look at the data and think of how would I draw it. But of course, then I did it completely different than it was. So the original chart had like little countries as bubbles, as a bubble grid. So basically, I actually found this nice notebook where so Toja did a really cool histogram with normal distribution, totally mathematical, and with nice functions on how to calculate that. And that's what I did based on this data. Unfortunately, this data was not really suitable for a distribution chart, but then I did it anyway. And you can see what happens. It's interactive, so you can see what happens if you play with the bin size. Things go like that. And yes, a lot of the countries have increased their import from Russia. So that's what it says here. And then if you hover on the country, you see how many countries. It's in this bin, 161 countries have increased their import from 0.02 billion to 0.92 billion last year. Okay, so, and then this is the, yeah, so basically, I think the challenge here was also how to kind of label where are some of the, the outliers, which are China, Netherlands, Turkey, and Germany, who have increased quite drastically their imports from Russia last year. Okay, so after the previous day where I discovered this awesome data set, I discovered this OEC website for data sets. So that's how the stories go, right? So you find a new data set, a new source. So basically in the previous day, I found this data source OEC, and now I had to do something experimental and also with distributions. And I don't remember exactly why I went for sunflower, but I do remember that I really, really wanted to do, since like forever, a rich plot. Again, you go, as I was saying, on Observable, you can get inspired by the visualizations and the notebooks from other people, and then you can basically you can see how it goes, right? So, and then you can basically adapt it for your data, right? So sometimes the whole work that you have to do is kind of get your data to be in the same format like the data that they used. And you should never underestimate how data wrangling is in JavaScript. It's not really like the nice Python data wrangling that you're used to. Although very late in the challenge, I rediscovered that somebody did actually sort of like tidy JavaScript in Observable. And I was like, how could I have forgotten about it? But yeah, so basically these are like the countries that are exporting sunflower. And this is like from 2010 to 2020. And you see here, what are the countries that are doing the biggest exports. And then basically these are the continents or the regions. So this is, yeah. And the aim of this chart was to look experimental, so I did not add labels, right? The labels are there for like hovering, but then they're not anymore for like, it's not for being interpreted. It's just more for looking pretty. What does most? Yeah. So in this chart, so there's a question. What does most mean in this chart from Gattoni? So in this chart, most means these are the so if you take the top percentile, the top share of exports of sunflower seed exports, and it turns out that that large share is actually covered by 16 countries. So basically you can say that I don't know the number, but you could say, okay, 80%. So I'm just now giving an example. So you could say 80% of sunflower seeds export is covered by 16 countries, and the rest of the 20% is covered by another 100 countries. And then in this way, you could say most of the sunflower seeds export is covered by 16 countries. But I don't know exactly if we're talking about an 80 to 20 share. We would have to see, because this data is exactly like that on the website here. Okay, so yeah, so this is a rich line plot that I wanted to do for a while, and it's quite funny because you can play with it. Again, I picked 72 here, which meant it looks nice, but you can like play around with it and make it look different, like no overlap almost. See? And the whole graph is gone. Yeah, but like this, you can exaggerate to see the lower part, what countries are there. Okay, there is a question on there is a comment on the previous slide, which is saying it would be would be really interesting to see the change from 2021 to 2022 following the global situation with Russia. So I think, yeah, so we just need to wait a bit. But if you're curious, so you have the access to the notebook, and you also have access to the data set, and they are updating this data. So you can, this is real-time world trade data, really cool website, and then you can check it out and keep up with the information. Okay, so what was the next day? Right, the next day, the topic was circular distributions. And as it was distributions and circular, I originally actually thought about doing this chart. So, and then I also did it. So I first did this chart where I basically compared populations to surface. And then I basically had them like, you know, just to show that, so they're adjusted that the circles are coming up across as the same size, the maximum and the minimum. And then the idea would be to see that they're not completely overlapping. So not every country has, the countries don't have the same density, so to say. But then I thought, okay, this is not really informative. And then I went for reusing the data and doing this chart where I have for each country showing the density, so the area, the population, and the density. And you see the density basically changes. So some countries like China and India have large populations. So very large. So India has the largest density, whereas Russia has largest surface and less population. The same, United States has more surface than population. And this is fun because you can actually see all the countries. I thought I could put, so I had already done last year a similar chart, but with data set from Tidy Tuesday on parks from New York City. And then I thought, or from United States, and then I thought, oh, I should do that grid. So I basically kind of already had the inspiration from back then. And that was pretty cool. So you see the countries that look like they have you don't really see the difference between the two circles are because they almost have density of 100. So yeah, so this is the one chart that was pretty cool to do and to see how it comes out. And it even got some hate speech on Twitter, which I could not report. Someone started saying about, you see how large populations are related to whatever religion that they were upset at. And as things are basically impossible to report on Twitter, right, for hate speech, apparently it's all freedom of speech. So yeah, so I just ended up blocking the person who ended up leaving like 4 comments on my charts. I don't know, maybe they still comment on this tweet. Okay, again, this is Wes Anderson colors, right? Now, this day, the economist topic on day 12, so economist distribution, this one really, really destroyed my flow because the topic economist was not about data about economists, but it was about making the chart look like it was from economist. obviously all my charts had a different style, which had nothing to do with The Economist. So I ended up looking at a lot of Economist charts over the years, and then I decided to kind of go for something to do with distribution of temperature. I had seen one that was on data from Australia and so on, but then I thought that's a little bit boring, and I don't know how at some point I decided to kind of check how hot is my birthday. So you can put your birthday in your chat in the channel. You can also access the chart right from by yourself, and then change the date here. And if somebody wants to see how hot is the Earth getting hotter on your birthday. So this data is about the average Earth temperature deviation, considering that 1951 to 1980 was normal. So everything after that then will become, is considered a deviation. So yeah, so I just had one birthday here when the temperature anomaly was a little bit, it was colder. So if you choose, of course, if you choose today, today is, what day is today? June 14. June 14. It's also quite hot. So 27th of September, let's see. It's going to have to be September 27. There you go. See? Not as hot as in spring. So yeah, so this chart was fun to do, and in the end, eventually. Though what is not so easy in JavaScript is to actually do this bar plots that go on both directions. That's actually quite counterintuitive to calculate how the boxes should be aligned, where, because in the end it's just rectangles and you tell it where to start and how high it should be, right? So you need to, for the upside down ones, you need to kind of mirror that, and then basically that's pretty counterintuitive. And yeah, and I will show you something funny happened to this chart afterwards. So yeah, okay. So in the end, I managed to turn this chart that was basically super working against me, because it was making me change my style. I managed to turn it into something that is funny. So the next day was about correlation. So we are going into the, if we look at the, we are already here. So we finished comparisons, and now we are done with distributions, and now we went into the relationships topic, so correlations. So I decided to take a look at a data set about trees, and the question was, do we have enough trees? Now, the aim of this chart is to make it look pretty again, right? This is the same chart as you saw with the marathon numbers and also with the world distribution, but it just looks different because the way the data is sorted differently. So these are countries that, so each country has the surface, you have the population, you have the number of trees it has, and the trees per capita, right? So the darker the green, the more trees per capita the country has. And the countries that I have in red, so are the countries that, so basically for colorblind, the countries that have a dark outline are the countries that have below the number of trees that a person needs, right? So basically, I found this article that says that a person needs 15 trees to offset the CO2 that you produce from eating 2,000 calories a day. So now, and that is like, and fun fact is that it takes 25 times more energy to actually put those 2,000 calories on the table. So now we are just dealing with the 15 trees per person. So we have all the countries here that don't have 15 trees per person. So I basically The biggest challenge about this chart was to make it colorblind friendly. I installed the Chrome plugin for checking color blindness. And there's also a question about it. Speaking of colorblind, from Vera, how do you take accessibility into account when you make your visualization? So yeah, so basically that's what I did, right? So I installed a plugin for Chrome for colorblind checking, and with did all the checks. So I had the hard constraint in this case that I really wanted to use this color palette from a scene in Wes Anderson's movie. And I tried to change the green with something else, and I tried to come up with the other color palette, but there was nothing out there that really, I was really stuck on this color palette. So I went for doing the outline, right? So, and you see, if you look at this chart in the colorblind palette, you will see that both the text and the circles that are below the average number of trees per person, they have like a dark outline. And when you see this chart in gray mode, you can notice that. So, so that's basically what I did. So I do check the charts. So if I use green and red on the same chart, I try to really check that. So normally I don't use green and red on the same chart, but I know there's other types of color blindness available. But yeah, so I try to check. So there's a plugin, and I'm not going to do an experiment now, but yeah, there we go. Let's do the experiment. There you go. So you can now see this chart in colorblind mode. And you see, so you can basically distinguish that this is what is connected to what. So going back to normal. Okay, so normal for the non-colorblind people. So yeah, so basically, it turns out that only 17% of the countries have more than number of trees per capita. Okay. So now I will talk about this in a second, about the overlap between the women word there. So yeah, so basically this was a chart that was really annoying me because the topic of the day was to do three-dimensional relationships. And I am not a big fan of 3D charts. Also last year on the 3D day, I basically kind of came up with something it was more like an experiment. So I got this data set from Worldometers on gender differences in height. And I was actually talking to one of the, I was in that time chatting with one of the, so Maxine, she's another Observable ambassador, and she was working on some charts, and we are also sometimes struggling with the JavaScript and the D3.js, and we are like exchanging on that on Slack. And I was just complaining how I was on a 4-day inspiration hiatus because of the 3D part. I was just like, every idea that I had was like super complicated. I was thinking of getting the weather data, the ice data at the North Pole and the South Pole, and then like build a sort of like, GitHub has now, you can export a skyline from your GitHub activity. So I wanted to do a 3D skyline of the ice at the North Pole versus the South Pole, and then add a time dimension to it. So you can already imagine this was like super complicated. And every idea that I had was kind of like blocked in how complex it was. And I was like, it's going to take me a lifetime just to do the coding for that. So she said, why don't you just add a little 3D element to your chart? You know, you don't have to have everything in 3D. So then I went on the Noun project and I searched for 3D, and I found only one visualization in 3D. So only one icon, and this was this meeple, I think, for playing games, right? So I used that. Now, and then I got the data on countries, and the height of people. And here the word women is different than the rest of the world, is because I zoomed in on the chart now, and as I'm manually adjusting where words are coming in JavaScript in order to do this coloring, you cannot add the style in the sentence. I have not figured out how to do that. So basically that's why this is happening now. So besides worrying about that, the message is that apparently in North Macedonia, men are super way taller than women. And in Gambia is the country with the smallest difference between men and women. And on average, men are 7% taller than women. And I was thinking of doing this chart, and I kind of did it like a mugshot, where you sit there when you always see like in movies where people have the sign with their name, but in this case, it's just the meeple there, and then like sitting in front of getting photographed. And as that is 3D and I didn't like it, I also did it in a way that you can actually understand something out of it, right? So this is the same data, right? But now you have the actual sizes. And you can see why 3D charts are really bad, because you do not understand how large the gaps between the meeples are based on the first chart, right? So only here you can start seeing like the real differences. And yeah, so this is the average height of women in the world, and then the average height of men. So yeah, so message, don't do 3D charts. And if you do a 3D chart, do it also 2D, just to make sure that, you know, everybody sees. And the last chart that I have was on natural disasters. And on natural disasters, I got the data from HDX. I just found some data set, natural disasters. And basically, I decided to do, so this is the same chart as the one that I did on the sunflower seeds. It's basically really the same one. I just organized things a little bit differently. Yeah. And I tried to add more data to the chart, but it was impossible to add more data to the chart without destroying it. So I tried to also do, because this data set also had how many people died and so on. So here is the damage coming from natural disasters, and we can see what happens with global warming, which disasters are picking up the pace these days. So we have the flood, so we have floods, storms, and earthquakes and drought. And then we have some incoming new ones, you know, insect infestation and volcanic activity. So yeah, and you can see, you can again play around with this to make it. That's the rich plot for you. Okay, so that was the last one. And I would like to just address a couple of takeaways. One thing that I basically really learned from this year's challenge compared to how I was doing it last year is really to limit the number of messages that you want to express with a chart. So I went on most of them with one main message plus like one general. So if you see here, the main message is that 39% of the total damage from natural disaster has been happening only in the last 10 years. So we are looking at here. This is, so 40% of all the disaster has been happening in the past 10 years. But actually the number of deaths from disasters have dropped. So we got really good at saving lives and so on. Yeah. Having a bold title, like bold in the sense of courageous, that catches the audience and the attention. And basically this title should hold an answer, right? So I could have the same chart and tell you, hey, look at the number of natural disasters happening, versus telling you that 40% of the natural disasters have been happening in the past 10 years. I mean, with this chart, it's also impossible to kind of read that. Maybe like this more, but no. Okay. And then the last one, which I also found like really like really hard to kind of find the line for, is to think about this trade-off between making pretty data visualization and distorting reality. So here you can see this is also a good example. So like I just have a toggle and I can make it look how I want, right? So it's like I picked the number that kind of show, you can still read it. You can see that the stuff is picking up in the recent years, right? But it's in the end a toggle that I choose where it goes, right? The data is, spanned. So yeah. And yes, indeed, I have very few colors. I try to go really for like 3 colors. So most of them have had 3 colors, 3 maximum 4. I in the end already started like having a copy pasting template that I was always starting with a new notebook. So I wanted to show some things that came out of stuff. So I am going to switch the screen and I can show the whole window. Oh, yeah, the whole window. Share. So yeah. Okay. So you see here, I had the economist visualization. So one journalist, Johannes Christ, he actually wrote me on Twitter if he can use my charts to do 1, 2. And they did that in a German newspaper. And they organized it a little bit differently. Of course, they didn't use economist colors, right? And people can now go on this website and see how the weather was in Germany for them. And they have some other stuff. And then I also would like to close on following me on Twitter. And I say like this sweater that I'm knitting now is based on the colors that I did for the sunflower chart. Except that now they are not sunflower exports, sunflower seeds export. They're like a upside down sunset. How I like to see the sunsets, with an orange sun and not with a blinding sun. So yeah. So thank you for your attention. And if you have any more questions, feel free to ask.
So hi Tereza. If you go to the question and answer tab, there are some questions I had moved there. I
Okay.
don't know if you had answered all of them. You can take a look, or maybe I could read them out. And
So there's
answer.
one that I didn't see. Okay, how did you choose the order for the continents? They are not alphabetically arranged, or so this would be the vulnerability of previous. Was that Navas? Was that related to this chart or to the previous chart? In this chart, they are ordered by the height of men, I think. In the previous chart, which is, wait, here, this one was with continents. This one was ordered by, okay, so that was that. And I think this one was ordered in the order that it came in. Because it's not ordered, yeah. Plus, well, this one is mostly ordered so that it looks nice, I would say. Where this one on the right side are aggregates. Yeah. So yeah, so for the previous one, the order was based on the height. And you can see it better here. It's based on the height of men or women. This man is shorter. I might have sorted it based on women. Because why not? I did the chart, right? Yeah, so I have a question from Michael. Which IDE did you use to write the D3 code and develop the chart? So all of this is done in Observable, like this presentation. So for example, if I click here, you see this is the chart, and this is the, I should just fix this because it's annoying me. So yeah, as you see, I fixed it. The double, as I said, that there's a lot of, the text at the top is really manually added, right? Word by word, if I want to have different colors in the text. And then I will remove this one here too. And then this is solved. And then I republish it. And now it's published. Okay, so yeah, so we can definitely check if it is, let's just check if it is ordered by sort. Yes, see, it is indeed sorted by women. You know, if someone wants to sort it by men, they can do the chart themselves. So yeah, I sorted it by women. It's, you know, from the perspective of the person doing the chart, right? So Christy is asking when, if I know when the next 30-day chart challenge will be. So the next 30-day chart challenge will be next April. In the meantime, I think in February or so, there's going to be a 30-day map challenge for the people into maps. I can totally recommend, if you want to learn something, to kind of anchor yourself to one of these challenges, because, so for me, seeing other people doing this, so you see here on the 30-day chart, wait, there it is. They were posting everybody's charts, you know, so everybody who did charts, and you can see so many things, what people did. And some of them are just super amazing, of course. And then everybody's writing what platform they used. You know, you can set up your own goals for the challenge. Like, for example, some people say, I want to do data visualization without using coding, you know, so there's all sorts of things, or just using new tools all the time for the people that are already good in some of the tools. And or I think last year there was a person that used the same data set for every chart, and then just kind of picked up a different story for each day. So you can decide what is the thing you want to learn, you know, for yourself. But then if you want to change your mind because it doesn't work out or something, you can change your mind, right? So nobody's keeping you like attached to a goal like that. So so yeah, so Vera asked if I, regarding the colorblind mode, if I actually do accessibility checks on other visualization or just this one. I think I did. Let's see. Did I check this one? So yeah, so this one also works because of the contrast. So yeah. So this one also works because of the contrast. Yeah, so I try to really do, and this one will also work. It has no green. So yeah, basically every time I use green and red in the same place, if I have to, I do that. At least for green and red, I have to basically, I know there are more, let's see. As you can see, I can do all of them in one go. And there are, you can see on all of them, you can see differences between stuff. Oh, this is a nice color combination. Okay, sorry. Okay. Yeah. I don't know how the world would look like if I would see it like this, all pink. Okay. Cool. So yeah.
There's someone who
I'll
say
share my-
that you should share your Twitter handle on the chat.
Yeah.
Maybe you could do that for people who want to follow, reach out to you.
Yes, please
And
do.
I think you should also expound on Vera's former question, first question, which was how do you take accessibility into account when you make a visualization? Apart from the color blindness stuff, what other accessibility criteria do you take into account when you make your visualization?
So one thing that so the color blindness is the easy one. The other one, I try to kind of write text that is readable with like use contrast. Even here, at least the message that was important was the one that is supposed to be readable. The other thing which I found really, really hard to do is, so on the 30-day charge challenge, the task is to also post things on Twitter, and you can also do it on LinkedIn and whatnot. And it is really easy to post a picture on Twitter and not add a caption. And adding a caption after you've already posted means you actually need to delete the tweet and do it again. And the thing is, I wish like Twitter would just have like a thing say, hey, you forgot the caption, but it doesn't, right? So you need to kind of click on another place to add a caption to the picture. And that is like why I sometimes ended up forgetting about adding the caption. And then I'm like, oh no, the caption. So yeah, so I'm really trying to at least add the caption, explain this is what's going on in this picture. And I think more and more people are kind of getting the drift that, you know, it's really important to add captions because not everybody is accessing the tweets the same way as you are, right? So it's really important to add. And also a lot of people are using assisting tools to access tweets. So yeah, so I try to write text about explaining what's in the chart, also outside the picture then, so to say. Yeah, that would be that, yeah. But there was a conference talk in, it's recorded, it's on YouTube from PyCon Berlin, which was having accessible website design and visualization design for people who are have albinism, because there they don't see if there's not enough contrast available. And I wasn't even like aware of that it's like such that exists like that. So I think yeah, getting educated, and then if somebody says, hey, this is not, I can't see this, I can't read this, and then, or if you find out new stuff about it, then you should apply it whenever, even though it is more work, right? It's not like using color palettes that are for colorblind people, using being mindful that text is easy to read and not overloaded. So yeah.
Yeah, if anyone has any other question, we can wait for another minute so that if anyone has a question, you could ask before
And I can.
Before we end the webinar.
So this is the website of the 30-day charge challenge if you want to follow it, and then you can see these are all the charts from last year of all the people that posted them on Twitter of this year, sorry. So this is day 1. You can see them by days. So yeah. Oh yeah, that was actually cool. So they have a bug in the website. The lower bar doesn't unblur. But yeah, so get inspired and inspire other people. That's learn in public, because the more people learn in public, I think other people get inspired to learn too, to see that it's possible. Especially with data visualization, which today there are some people doing really, really cool data visualizations out there. And it's like, you're thinking, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to get to that level? So I think that's what I'm thinking whenever I see those. It's like, I wish I could do that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it seems we don't have any other question. So maybe I would just close the webinar.
Okay.
So yeah.
And thank you everybody for joining us this evening or morning.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. This video will be available maybe in the next 24 hours in our YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and look at it, you can do that in the next 24 hours. So thank you very much for joining our webinar. Look out for what we have in store for next month. We also have an upcoming sprint on PyMC. If you're interested in open source, you could join that. So thank you everyone. See you. So I'm going to stop recording now.